1. I had a Fulkerson's osteotomy on my knees, both done about 6 months apart. For those curious about what it is, the front of the shin bone is removed along with a tendon and grafted to the inside of the leg to realign the knees. As part of the fun, I had to wear a Zimmer splint for 6 months after each to allow the graft to take and strengthen. Zimmer splints are fun. It goes from your crotch to your ankle and locks your leg straight. A pain in the butt and many other areas, especially when sitting. Because the knee can't be bent, you just sit there with a straight leg. Anyhow, onto the entitled elderly lady. I was about a week post-op, but on a metric ton of oxycodone all week. Causes a conveyor machine to back up a bit. A couple of days of everyone's favorite conveyor machine repair substance, laxatives, found me at a shopping center. A very familiar bubbling rumble started through my gut, and I knew it was time. The abomination that had made its home deep inside my bowels was ready to depart, and I had to exorcise this demon. With the Zimmer splint and crutches, I made the Usain Bolt to the nearest appropriate facility at warp 9.5, and thankfully found the disabled toilet was available. I settled in and started to meditate as I prepared for the task ahead. With a bit of gentle persuasion, reciting the correct prayers and even asking Odin for a favor or four, the demon started to push out into the open world, looking for its next host. Both the demon and myself battled. The demon didn't want to leave, and I had to rid myself of it once and for all. An epic battle raged in that little disabled toilet in a Westfield shopping center, a battle that none know of, but had implications for the plight of humanity itself. We battled, and eventually, I won. The demon was in a place of where it needed to be. Finished the business, washed my hands, because if you don't, you're a groat, and hobble out of the disabled toilet. Exhausted, but knowing what had to be done was done. Come face to face with this elderly lady, screaming at me that being lazy isn't a disability, and I should just use a regular toilet so people like her can use a disabled toilet. I know she was elderly and all, but surely she could see at that point I was in fact disabled by the very definition of the word. I pointed that out and copped the "young people are so rude" speech. She pushed past me and went into the disabled toilet. I made sure to thank her for reminding me that being disabled isn't a disability, and apologized for the inconvenience as I heard loud coughing and dry retching come from behind the now closed door behind me. That demon had found a new home. 2. I am 26 years old, and I decided to open my own business this year. Moving forward in this post, I should point out that I am from a small town, 1,000 people, in the rural Midwest. Because of this, everyone has some sort of connection with someone. We went to one of the liquor stores in the closest city, 30-ish minutes away, small city, 8,000 people. When we were grabbing some alcohol for a party, I was looking at the prices and saw how insane the prices were. For a 6-pack of local beer, we were charged $15. I was thinking about this and figured I could probably make bank opening a liquor store. Back in February, I was furious about my shitty job and thinking how cool it would be to own my own business to a friend. My friend's mom happened to be president of the local bank. He told me, "Hey, with the pandemic, the bank has been struggling to find customers to give out loans. Right now, the bank is giving loans for cheap." A couple of weeks later, I went in and met with my friend's mom and pitched my idea with the research I had done on alcohol prices, potential demand, and estimated income. I got the loan, at a fantastic interest rate. I bought a building, which happened to be a former bank, and hired my dad to help me renovate the building. My dad is a general contractor, and he gave me an excellent quote on materials and labor. After working everything out with the distributors, getting the proper licenses, and getting my paperwork I needed for the government, I was ready to open my liquor store in May. I had started taking out ads in the local newspaper advertising my store and my prices. When I was in talks with my distributors, I learned even with inflation and everything else, the liquor stores in the city had like an 80% markup. I talked to a local business owner and he suggested that I have around a 35 to 40% markup. Because of this, I was significantly cheaper than the closest liquor store, and had a much wider selection than the gas stations and local stores nearby. My hometown is near a national forest. As such, we have a ton of people who come up for weekends for recreational activities year-round. My first week, the week before Memorial Weekend, after opening, I had made $4,000 profit. It was great being my own boss. If someone was rude to me or my girlfriend, oh, I'm sorry, you can do your business elsewhere. If someone tells my girlfriend, go back to China, some other rude names, you can pay me 15% more at the register. Did the gang and I run out of alcohol? Time to grab my keys. Not car keys, the store keys. My apartment is like 2 blocks away, and go to the store. That's not to say it wasn't difficult running my own business, especially that my only employee was my girlfriend, and we were both working 6 or 7 to 10 12-hour days a week. I was both manager, accountant, and cashier. But fuck, it's so much nicer knowing I can tell someone to pound sand for being a prick. A couple of weeks after Memorial Day, some old guy walks into my store a couple of minutes after I opened. He seemed friendly enough, but eventually he offered to buy my store. I'm not going to say the amount, but it wouldn't even have covered my principal on the loan. I rejected the proposal outright, and refused to negotiate the sum higher. He walked out of my store saying, "Well, you'll be sorry you rejected that offer." The next month, the guy walked into my store and asked if I was the owner. After saying yes, I was informed that my business was being sued by this random guy I've never heard of for libel. After he heard, I was freaking out and decided I was going to close early. When I got home, I googled the guy and soon saw a picture of the guy that tried to buy my store. It turns out that's the guy who owns both of the liquor stores in the nearby city. It also just happens that he is on city council. With a little further digging, I learned that this city has an ordinance that reads, "Any business institution that does not fulfill the definition of a restaurant, tavern, or liquor dispensary will be excluded from obtaining a license for the sale of alcohol." Later I discovered that the same guy happens to be the head of the board which approves liquor licenses. I love small-town corruption. Either way, I had a major issue. My maternal uncle happens to be a lawyer in a neighboring state. I decided to call him and try to get some legal advice. I talked to him and read the documents that I had been handed and served over the phone, and the research I had done. After receiving all the information I had read off, I was expecting to get some sort of advice, but instead heard, "Hang on, I gotta make a call." After he hung up, I'm freaking out. I was actually about to post my first post to our legal advice. I'll be honest, I just wanted someone to tell me it was going to be okay, and I didn't need to crawl to this guy on my hands and knees. As I was writing the title, my uncle called back. "Hey LP, I just got off the phone with my partner. He agreed that we can take your case pro bono. If you would like to accept, we can discuss in my office tomorrow at 1 o'clock. This is how I learned that my uncle is on the bar in 3 states. So we met, and we discussed the case. It turns out that the guy filed the libel suit against my business based on the ads I took out in the local newspapers. He claimed that my ads were targeted to damage his and his business's reputation. There were a few other things that I had no idea what was being referenced, but Uncle assured me that we would win this case no problem. 3 weeks later, the case is dismissed, but after my uncle says, "People like that piece of work will likely try to file another suit against you. If that happens, call me and promise I will help." The next day I get served again, but this time I am the defendant. Not my store, me. I swear to God, I look at the documentation and the only thing that changed was instead of my business's name, mine is listed as the defendant. Same thing happens 4 weeks later, the case is dismissed. Over the next 3 months, I was sued just as many times. Before the 5th case's hearing, we had a settlement meeting. My uncle, the judge, the guy suing me, his lawyer, a bailiff, and I were sitting in this room. Judge says, "You two have been in court 4 times already. Is there any way we could come to an agreement that'll stop this cycle of faulty litigation?" The guy's lawyer says they have an offer and hand it to the uncle, who then hands it to me. I essentially read that he'll stop all litigation if I sell my business for about 30% of remaining loan principal. I outright rejected the offer and made a counteroffer. I said, "If you drop this case, I won't sue your ass for harassment." He busts out laughing. Sue me? With what money? The legal fees alone ought to have drained you. You should be happy I chose to extend this offer and not sue your ass into bankruptcy. And buy that shithole from the bank when they foreclose on your dumb ass. The judge, the bailiff, and the guy's own lawyer were all looking at him aghast for saying the silent part out loud and the real reason I was getting sued. My uncle straight out told him, "I'm sorry, apparently you were never told. I have taken all of my nephew's cases pro bono. The only money he has spent on your litigations is gas, and bluntly, sir, I think your outburst is just insured a suit against you." After that, we just left, and I was then informed a few days later the litigation was dropped. Right now, my uncle and I are talking about the future suit against the guy. I want to sue the guy for a very high amount to try and get press attention on him and his sketchy actions, although my uncle warned me that we'll need to be careful because if we set damages too high, it'll look like we're just being vindictive. This suit won't be pro bono, but after getting sued 5 times for free essentially, I'm not going to complain. Looking back on this, I'm so thankful that my friends and family supported me the entire way. Especially my uncle. Without my uncle, I would have absolutely lost my business. 3. So this happened about 20 years ago. I was working customer service desk at a TJ Maxx type store, so an off-price retail store. We used to get a lot of entitled customers in, and while they were a trip to deal with, I could get most of them to leave happy with little fuss. Now there was this one older guy, Adam. This guy was so entitled that he would park his sports car across 3 parking spots. Yeah, that kind of entitled. That's not all of it. I've seen this guy make hardened managers of 30 years shaking their boots. He had to make a scene every time he was in the store. I got tired of it. One day he came in, and I was working counter doing returns and layaway. I called back to the office and let the manager who had dealt with him last time, and made Crying know he was in the store. Her voice got shaky and asked if I needed help up there. I told her no, I got this. She came down anyways and stood inside our layaway room, which was right off customer service desk at the time. He comes storming up and tries to muzzle his way in front of a customer who was waiting on a price check. I look him straight in the eye and glare, telling him, "Adam, I'm with another customer." Now, I'm not an imposing figure. I was in my early to mid-20s, 5'10", and weighed about 160 pounds. I'm also very soft-spoken. I don't have a loud voice and rarely ever raise it. He seems taken aback for a moment, probably between the glare and me knowing his actual first name. He quiets down and ends up waiting for a moment, but I can see his entitlement starting to boil like a tea kettle. When it was his turn, he slams a $20 pair of shoes on the counter and demands a discount on them because there is a tiny black scuff on them from someone trying them on. I told him I could take 10% off, so $2. His anger came to a point. He started trying to dress me down, saying that this was outrageous, that our prices are so high and our merchandise was so cheaply made. When he gets done spouting off his nonsense, I say in a raised but even tone of voice, while giving him my best glare, the one that people call my Neo glare. You know, the one that Neo gives the other agents in the original Matrix movie after he kills Hugo Weaving's Agent Smith? I look him dead in the eye. "Adam, we're an off-price retail store, meaning our merchandise is already 50 to 60% off what you would pay in the big stores. You are getting a good deal by getting a $50 or $60 pair of shoes for $18. However, if you want a better deal than this, there is a Salvation Army down the road." He gets this deer-in-the-headlight look and starts gasping like a landed fish. He shakily leaves the shoes on the counter and slowly makes his way out of the store. I leave the counter feeling slightly bad because he looked like he was about to have a heart attack. I watched him get into his car and just sit for a second, before putting his car in drive and leaving, rather than his usual peeling out of the parking lot. Wow! I jump, being so focused on what had happened and making sure he was gone, that I hadn't heard the manager walk up behind me and looking over my shoulder. I then look around, and you could hear a pin drop. Most of the customers in the cashier lines were regulars, and our usual night cashiers were all staring at me, gobsmacked because I never raised my voice. I just shrugged and said, He needed to hear it. My boss gives me a big hug with tears in her eyes and says thank you, and says she will deal with any potential backlash that ensues. None ever did. Now fast forward about 6 or 7 years. I'm no longer working at the retail store, and I don't work in that town anymore. I was working for a corporate-owned gas station chain, and had happened to be sent to help out the one around the corner from my old place of business. I hear a car peeling into the parking lot and look up. Sure enough, I see a brand new sports car. I thought, no way. I see a man get out and start walking in with a definite cock in his stride. He opens the door and I immediately yell out, "Hi, Adam!" with a big smile on my face. He stops dead, looks at me, face going white. He abruptly turns around, runs back to his car, and squeals out of the parking lot. The manager of the gas station looks at me and back out the window and then back at me. "What was that?" I shrug. I guess I left a bigger impression on him the last time we met than I thought. 4. Mom and stepdad have been married for around 18 years. She brought him down to Las Vegas in October 2014 so he could recover and get disability from his work overworking him, to work almost double his standard hours of local truck driving. And I mean like trailer trucks. So this was horrendous abuse by the company. This doesn't excuse what's about to take place and what I learned over time. So she brought him down here with her travel nursing because she made more than enough to cover everything. But, well, he got caught cheating, gambling away nearly parts of her paychecks for things like utilities and large portions of rent leading to emergencies, pocketing money for paying fines or car payments, things like that. He eventually was given the option to leave or stop his behavior. About 8 months from the original story I was telling and, well, left. Mom told my stepdad if he left, he isn't coming back, and she meant it. So he ended up going back up to Oregon to live with some friends, and his brothers kicked him out, and he ended up coming back to Las Vegas, because basically his brother prioritized helping someone worthwhile. Stepdad's niece, who fell on hard times by no fault of her own, and he'd basically been pulling the same shit with them that he did to my mom, being a freeloader. There's a nuance and shit about that I do not know. I do know about a couple of more recent things that happened whilst I was in the hospital for gallbladder removal, and subsequent complication issues from it, and hanging out with her during her days off, the week and a half I'd been hospitalized. So she'd gone and got the paperwork for divorce. She sent him the paperwork, with necessary cash to cover the cost of a ride, an Uber, Lyft, bus ticket, to the bank to get the papers she'd sent him signed and notarized and sent back to her. She is smart, and literally only sent what she needed him to sign and see, legally speaking. She's literally just trying to get him out of her life forever. She sent this to him just before my surgery, and he got it shortly after my initial surgery. He told her as much, and I know because I was there hanging out with her after a trip to the ER post-surgery. So this went according to expectation, for stepdad that is. He decided to tell Mom that he couldn't get it done because he didn't have a valid ID since his license was revoked due to non-payment of tickets. Her question was, then how did you open your own bank account? Which is a really good question, as the bank she joint banked with him at, you needed both people with ID present to remove someone from the account. And my mom found this out when trying to remove him, and he had somehow managed to, at a later date, remove himself from her account and opened a separate account, which makes us wonder if he had some random woman pretend to be Mom while he presented ID and made his own account, or if he got someone to break bank policy, but that's neither here nor there in this case. The point was, she'd caught him in a lie. She knew that he had ID that would let him get it notarized, and that he was trying to stall and hopefully get more money. So moving forward about 2 days, I'm in the hospital, she's working and trying to visit me as she can. Not much happens other than him saying he tried to go to USPS and FedEx and that didn't work, apparently. As well as that he was looking into getting a passport replacement and that he might need help with that. Not that Mom cares. I'm getting to hear this in relative real time. Then, the day came around. Stepdad decides he's going to try something else.
Yesterday I went to the bank and couldn't do it either because my passport being outdated.
She told me I can do the passport thing online, and somebody said I could go to the post office and do it either way, and that it cost us last time $100. I had a big problem yesterday. Went to buy a car, went to get change, and somebody grabbed my wallet. I chased after them. He then threw the wallet, grabbed my money, and took off. I couldn't chase him down, so yesterday I was at $1,000. I'll find out later today if I can even afford to get another hidey thing. If I go to the DMV, they're going to want to have some kind of information, which I didn't have with them, and then they'll take my identity passport for ID, and I can always find out. He said over 2 texts. The reason this is especially bullshit is that he keeps his wallet in his front pocket. I have never not seen it there for over 18 years. For starters, that he lives in a really safe area of Las Vegas. Secondly, so it's honestly more likely that Robert Downey Jr. waved at him than he got mugged. 3, he has a back fracture, so his running after anyone for more than 2 steps is about as likely as me having the body I want tomorrow morning. And fourthly, upon Mom saying, well, whatever you have to do, if you really need it, I'll give you $50 upon getting the paperwork back to recover double the cost of the state ID or half the cost of the passport. He basically told her he'd do his best to get it back to her before the end of the week. This meaning he wants $50, and the idea that she'll be willing to give him $50 for returning the paperwork properly was enticing to his gambling addiction. It also helped that she basically told him that if he didn't do it, she was politely asking him, for a week, and had provided him money to begin with, to do. That she would basically file single and put in everything that he did that Mom knows he did, and assured him that she knows more than enough to entitle her to a significant portion of his retirement and disability, as it was due to his lying, cheating, emotional manipulation and abuse, financially screwing her, etc. And that she had proof, all of it, which she does, as the computers he used were hers, and that she doesn't want to do it, but she would if she was forced to. I also want to add, he knew I was having my gallbladder removed when Mom sent him the papers. She told him. He also knew I had been in the ER on Tuesday and had a seizure, and that Mom was taking care of me. He knew the day she was working and that I was in hospital Thursday, undergoing 3 different procedures in about the span of a week to fix the complications. Stepdad knew because Mom told him, so he knew she didn't have time for his excuses. He didn't care. He kept trying to get money and on a few days used my situation to start the conversation for the day before trying to get her to send him money. Just wanted to put that one out there because he knew it was happening. That my mom was working and visiting me on her time off, and keeping up with my situation as I had no one else to do that for me except her. The epilogue to this story is my mom, after dating 2 losers, eventually found a guy she really likes. I can't say much about him other than he makes amazing food, and deeply cares about my mom, and animals as well as other people. His family, as in his kids, are realizing he's a decent person, isn't enough for me to even refer to him as Dad. Which I've never done. Ever. I usually call people by their first name, though my mom and grandparents are the exceptions to that. Both of us had to lean on each other, along with my grandma, to get through my great-grandmother's passing almost 2 years ago now. She passed at 89, and yes, I was close to her. It was hard for all of us, but we all got through it, and her boyfriend supported her through it all. She even bought him an extremely nice bass guitar. I don't know much of anything about bass guitar, or guitars in general, but apparently it was so nice that he broke down in tears in private with her. And he's an enthusiast over bass playing in sports. Last portion of the epilogue. My mom learnt as a sport hobby, the coach won't take strippers, just people who want to learn it as a sport, or hobby, style of self-expression. She learned pole dancing and has been getting stronger and stronger, and losing a ton of weight as a result. Her physical feats are quite impressive. So overall, the last 3 years have been a relatively happy, if not bumpy, ending to this saga. Yes, we did get everything back to my mom, signed with marriage certificate shortly after the original post. He handed it over to my little sister after she helped him out with something in person as payment. I forget what she was there to help with, unfortunately, but the divorce was finalized shortly after that. 5. This took place when myself and my now ex-girlfriend were 16 and 17. Her entitled mother and father never liked me, even before I started dating her. If I had to guess, I think it might have been my being openly LGBTQ. They are both very Christian and openly homophobic. Not conforming to stereotypical female roles, hobbies, and dressing, and me not being a good influence on her. We're still friends to this day, but back then we used to go to school together. And I'd catch the bus home with her sometimes, due to my mum working a lot and my dad being hard to get via public transport. So, I'd eat dinner at hers a lot. Her mother found me and her were dating because she snooped through her phone while she was sleeping and screamed at her about dating a girl. She told me about it at school the next day because her parents took her phone. Me and her continued dating, but the next time I came over to her place for dinner, her parents were waiting for me on the porch of her house. Keep in mind this is paraphrasing. This happened 3 or 4 years ago.
Are you dating my daughter?
Does it concern you if I am?
Yes, it does.
Yes, I'm dating her.
Well, I don't believe anyone should date anyone of the same sex.
You drilled it into her head that she shouldn't get pregnant before 18. Isn't this preventing her from getting pregnant?
I didn't mean it like that. Women shouldn't date other women, and men shouldn't date other men.
I wouldn't listen to a book that's over 2,000 years old and has no proof to back it up.
I don't care. I choose to believe in it like you choose not to.
Okay, can I come inside and get food? She scoffed but opened the door for me. I then ate with my girlfriend and we watched The Intimidation Game. It's a really good movie if you haven't watched it. I got a lot of the silent treatment from both her parents about me dating her, and a lot of dirty looks. I ignored it. Not too long after, she turned 17 and got her provisional driver's license. Explanation for non-Australian listeners. With a provisional license, you can drive independently without a qualified supervising driver or driving instructor. But remember, your P-plates must be on, your license handy, and the road rules and P-license rules must be followed. Some rules of the P-license include you are not allowed to drive any high-powered or modified vehicles without an exemption. This law is only applicable in some states. You are not allowed to drive above 100 kph. You are not allowed to drive with more than one person aged 16 to 20 in your car, minus immediate family. You cannot exceed 10 kph of the speed limit at any time, and some older cars are outlawed. She bought a car she saved up for since almost 2013. A white 2014 Holden Commodore SV6 with a manual transmission. Australian designed and built car worth roughly 20 to 25,000 Australian dollars in the condition and specs that she got it in. She likes cars a lot. It's something we have in common and wanted something reasonably nice to drive for her provisional license. However, despite her being fully capable of buying the car and for fuel, maintenance and repairs, her mother and father tried to talk her out of buying it because it would be too fast or too expensive to keep, despite it maybe making 230 or 210 horsepower at the wheels in a roughly 1,700 kilogram car. She nearly didn't buy the car and bought something her parents wanted her to buy instead. I talked her out of it and said she'd be wasting her money if she didn't spend it on what she really wanted. We went and bought it, and she really liked it. So I helped her get a better deal on it, and we signed the paperwork for it. She was specified to be the only owner, and it would only be used by her. We got to her house, and it's barely 5 minutes of her getting home, and her mother says this. Keep in mind, her entitled mother and father both had their own 2 vehicles they shared, a 2013 Toyota Yaris and a 1980s Toyota Caravan. So, Effie, since you're still living with us, we'll be using your car. What? No, I paid for it. It's my car. It's my house and it's my rules. It's my car and my name's on all the paperwork. If you were to use my car, I could call the police and report it stolen. Well, who are the police going to believe? Effie's name is on all the papers. You aren't mentioned on any part of the paperwork. You'd be stealing it if you were to use it. Me and Effie were having a private conversation. I don't need your opinion in this. And then she used a rather awful gay slur. I don't normally get annoyed when I get called that, but it really pissed me off. Fuck you, honestly. No one would care if you hung yourself, you fat cow. She looked at me like she was about to scream at me, but Effie just pushed me into her car and drove me home. We talked about it and I cooled off, but I was still pissed. A few months pass again. I turn 17 and get my provisional license, and I haven't seen her mother and father since I called her mother a cow. Effie started noticing her car's tank being emptier or having extra kilometers done than she remembered putting on it. She confronted her parents, but they denied it. She came to me about it, and I said we could probably put a tracker in her car. She agreed to it and connected it to her phone. One day, when she had come to hang out with me, she got a notification her car had moved. We took screenshots as evidence that the car had been moved and that she wasn't driving it. Effie had a spare car key on her, and I suggested she keep it on her in case something were to happen. We drove my car, at the time black 2009 Ford Falcon XR6 Auto, again an Aussie-made, designed and exclusively sold car which was my mum's and was given to me when she got a new car. To Effie's car. It was in front of a shopping centre, so we go to it, unlock it. She gets in and I get in my car and we both drive to my place and wait for one of her parents to call. We got a call about half an hour later from her entitled father. She picked up and I didn't hear the conversation, but she spoke about how the car belonged to her and if her father or mother ever touched it again, she'd be calling the police, then hung up. She got into a fight with her parents, where she packed all she could of hers into her car and stayed at mine for a few weeks, until she could find another place to stay. Since then, she's gone no contact with her parents, and me and her are on good terms. When I first met her parents, I tried to be kind, but they were always rude to me, so I eventually gave up trying to be kind. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Idiots in the Wild, episode 83. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. I had to graft one in from entitled parents there to get the video completed, but I think we're okay in the end. Okay, let's see. I don't believe there are any special shoutouts for today, so let's move right along to Hellfreezer's question. Or Hellfreezer's story. I've been recording for several hours. I think I've lost the ability to make the good words. To Hellfreezer's question of the day, and today's question is: movie franchises you love that you think are long due for a reboot. Not because you stopped loving them, but maybe the more recent output wasn't as good as it used to be, and you think a fresh take would be the way to go. I'm tempted to say Friday the 13th here, but it's been so long since we've had one, with all the legal issues that are getting worked out there. Although, apparently close to getting it worked out. So I'm going to say, this might be sacrilege, the Terminator franchise. I want them to just give it a full, hard reboot. Just get rid of everything that existed before. It's a separate continuity. It's its own thing. Then just start from the beginning. Don't try to weave it in. Don't try to do this, that, yet, and just make it its own thing. I think that's a better way to do it. I'd be curious to hear what you think, so please do let me know in a comment below. Thank you. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.